Hi, my name is Sandra Eagle. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist for 40 years, and part of my expertise is in working with issues of domestic violence and with trauma. I'm also a consciousness teacher and a teacher of metaphysical principles involved in creating change. On Wednesday, March 11th, I went to Hartford to appear before the Judiciary Committee in a hearing they were having on Senate Bill 650 and the accompanying bill, House Bill 6848, an act to protect victims of domestic violence. I got there at 9:30 on Wednesday morning, and I didn't get to give testimony until 1:15 a.m. Thursday morning, and I would like to share the story of that because I feel that in that proceeding arose the possibility of a shift in consciousness that could be a turning point in the war on women. So the bill I went to give testimony for, an act to protect victims of domestic violence, addresses that when a woman feels that she's in danger from her husband and has compelling enough evidence that he's threatened her life or the life of her children, then a judge can order an immediate temporary restraining order. And the reason it's temporary is because the man hasn't been given a chance yet to have his side heard. Current law says that if a permanent restraining order is granted and a permanent restraining order lasts a year in Connecticut, then yes, the man's gun is taken away. But at the point of a temporary restraining order being granted, the gun has not been taken away. And this bill proposes to fix that problem, and it's a problem because the greatest number of fatalities are by gun, and the greatest number of fatalities happen in that time between the temporary restraining order and permanent restraining order. And so in the room, and you could see visually at 9:30 in the morning, I don't know how many women were there, but it was just packed with women who were there, who are either the women leading those lives, the domestic violence victims themselves, or the advocates working with them. Also men and women who were there to advocate for the removal of kind of the temporary restraining order. And a very small fraction, visually, a very small fraction of the room were men who were there to testify against that bill on the grounds that because the man hasn't been given a chance to be heard yet, taking away his gun would be a violation of his Second Amendment right to bear arms. So then there was also another bill being heard, which HB 5505, an act concerning family court proceedings. Last month, February, the Department of Justice announced a task force, launching a task force to look at corruption on this level of the state. Apparently, there have been hundreds of thousands of complaints over the years of corruption. And one of the primary targets of that investigation is the family court. So, and there's an Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, which is a trade association of lawyers, evaluators, judges, guardian ad litems, representatives of which were in the court to argue against that bill, and then people who feel that they are harmed by corruption in the court in court proceedings to argue for 5505. So I feel there were in the committee that there were really many members of that committee who have a lot of integrity and really understood the complexity of the issue. However, the actual structure of the hearing was such that the first victim who came forward to give testimony wasn't heard. She had to wait for 6 hours before she was heard. And that woman is the mother of Lori Jackson, grandmother to Lori Jackson's children. And Lori Jackson is a woman who last year went for a temporary restraining order, got the restraining order, but the marshal was not able to locate the husband. And so after 14 days, she would have to reapply for a temporary restraining order. And on the 13th, and the grandmother and the mother felt in such danger that they wore pendants so that they could push a button and contact 911. And still on the 13th day, the husband broke down the door. 911 did not get there in time, and this woman, this mother of Lori Jackson, testified that she was shot 3 times and that her daughter was fatally shot 4 times in front of the children. And but she was the only victim who was heard, because as far as I'm aware, by the way, I left the room a few times, so I hope so if I'm wrong about that, please, make a statement on this video. But she was the only one who was heard, because by 3 o'clock, half the women had gone, and by 6, all but one of the victims were gone. They were the moms. They had to go home. They had to see the kids. So this committee, again, that I have tremendous respect for, the theater of this hearing actually mirrors the abusive paradigm, because the abusive paradigm is one where the father, and I'm saying father, but I hope you know that men have often been on the other side of this abuse. And the real hold on the safe parent is that the safe parent has the eye on the children. But because the gross majority of victims are women, and in this conversation I refer to it as men and women, so the abusive paradigm is where the abuser gets to silence the mother and silence the children with his rage and with his threats, and silence the mother not only for fear of herself, but because she has her eye on the children not getting traumatized. And one of the legislators, after Lori Jackson's mom spoke, was clearly moved by the depth of the tragedy. But his comment was that he doesn't feel that we should be making a law based on one situation. And this is shocking to me, that his reality is so different from my reality. 60,000 clients were served in domestic violence centers in Connecticut last year alone, 60,000. And those are only the ones being served by the domestic violence centers. There's rampant violence going on in families. I think the statistic is 1 out of 4 families experience domestic violence, and 1 out of 6 children are sexually abused or raped by, and a lot of that is incestuously. So we're really working with a razor's edge of creating safety for these families. And by the way, the safety isn't just in the name of the mother and the father. These families, maybe this couple was in love, and then the man evidences these explosions that are really terrifying, and maybe she realizes right away, maybe she feels trapped because she doesn't feel she could get a divorce, because that would mean the children would be alone with the father when these things happened, and she wouldn't be there to protect them. Or maybe she has hope, but for whatever reason, at the point that she files for divorce, and therefore files first for a restraining order, she has no hope. And these are the good moms in your life. These are the soccer moms, the football moms. They're the cashier who smiles at you in the supermarket. They're your cousin, they're your sister. These are the good moms in your life, and they've navigated a very treacherous path with as much normalcy as possible in the name of their love for their children, you know, and their children are at those games and are playing at the football games. And she's coming to you now, and she's saying she's in trouble. She's in trouble. She needs help. She's in trouble, real trouble. That he's threatening to kill her and the kids. So and for at that point for you to say, well, can't help you because you know he has a right to bear arms. I feel is asking the state to be, if that woman gets murdered, complicit in that murder. The temporary restraining order, if it's granted, the judge has to schedule within 14 days a hearing for that permanent restraining order. So you're asking the man to give up his gun for 14 days. And you know, the argument of the men arguing against the bill, well, you know, what if she's making it up? You know, what if, and then at the permanent restraining order hearing, you know, the guy's found innocent of these allegations. She made them up. And now he will have had to have been without his gun for 14 days. And first of all, there are consequences. You know, usually you're asking for a restraining order at the point of a divorce proceeding. It's really not in your interest to absolutely lie on an affidavit that this judge is now going to be adjudicating your divorce case. So, or that would be on the record that you falsely filed. But be that as it, and it's not just in the interest of the women and children. You know, if you were a best friend to this guy, and his woman his wife is terrified she's gonna, you know, he's gonna do something crazy. If the adrenaline is that heightened, you know, I think you might tell your friend, you know, maybe it's a good thing to, you know, not have your gun for the next 14 days. Maybe everybody needs to calm down. There are children involved in here, and there's a lot of terror going on. Maybe it's okay. Certainly, last month in Westchester, a policeman who had only just retired for a month previous from the force shot and killed his 13-year-old daughter and his 17-year-old daughter, and then killed himself. And that was at the point that the wife had gone for a restraining order. So. You know, it's also in the man's interest to, you know, be protected from doing something, from acting out in a way that he can't take back. So, however, in the morning you get there and there's, you know, a room full of women, you know, by the evening, that ratio had seriously shifted, and there was visually more at least equal footing, and as the night went on, a majority of the men who had come to give testimony against this bill, and the people who gave testimony against this bill, other than the paid NRA female lobbyist and the lawyer she brought with her, other than those two women, they were all men, and the testimony they gave, now one of them gave personal testimony. Hey, I lived through my ex-wife making false allegations on for getting a temporary restraining order, and then if this law was in place, I would have had to give up my gun for the 14 days that it took to, and it doesn't always take 14 days, it just has to be within 14 days, but for the 14 days that it took for the judge to decide against the restraining order. Now, one of them told a personal story. They were telling, you know, what if a woman makes it up? But the domestic violence women who were there are the women who are living there. They weren't what-ifing, they are what-ising. What is happening to me and my children in my life now? And how it could have been avoided, or whatever their testimony was going to be, had the gun been taken away. But the theater of this hearing, you know, mirrored and condoned and institutionalized that abusive paradigm because the women were silenced. It wasn't a level playing field. they had to go home to take care of the kids. So I feel that here the very members out of tremendous integrity who are trying to do something about the problem, the structure of the hearing actually participates in the problem. And I think it's and I have enough respect for these members that I believe that they're capable, and I'm making this appeal because I believe they're capable of having that shift in consciousness that really the women ended up being second-class citizens because they did not have the same access to being heard as the men out of that devotion to their children. So I'm making this video to appeal to the Judiciary Committee to have another hearing, or in the future its hearings. I feel like when a bill is a life or death bill, that the first people who should be heard, the very first people, are the people whose lives that would be affecting. And the legislator who thought that this was being based on one case, I think if he could have heard from woman after woman, soccer mom after football mom, who are living these lives, that might have made a difference. Maybe it would have even made a difference to the men who feel the priority here is the right to bear arms. So I'm asking that you have another hearing, or that in the future you structure the hearings differently, and that and then if there's some regulation that you can't have another hearing, that you then meet informally with these women, but that you give them equal access to being heard. And I feel that would actually be a shift in that paradigm, a shift in the paradigm that is the war on women, and that Connecticut legislators and citizenry would then be, play a leading role in shifting that paradigm, a turning point in the war on women. The other bill that was being argued was really an anti-corruption bill, and so this Association for Concerned Family Court, Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, it's very possible. I don't know much about I'm not intimately aware of that. I just know that there are a lot of families, several families who contacted me saying that they were too afraid to show up and give testimony in favor of the anti-corruption bill because their cases are still being heard, and they felt that retaliation could happen against them. So the one mom who did come forward really came forward she came forward for her sake, but she was really a voice for those families who were not able to show up. A voice for, yes, this has happened to me, my 3-year-old is being taken from me, and I believe, and I've appealed to all these people, and I believe these decisions have been made in retaliation of my speaking up. And so that was really, there's her whose ability to see her baby is in the hands of these players, these very professional players, lawyers, evaluators, judges, who were there in the courtroom, who could see her on network, Connecticut network. So it was a real, kind of David and Goliath moment, right, where she's totally vulnerable, they have all the power, and she's willing to speak up. So I feel that for the integrity of these hearings, that the Judiciary Committee she actually gave names, has to follow up on that and make sure that she is not retaliated against for speaking up. And in fact, because she gave those names, she perhaps is the first person who you ought to refer to that task force investigating that corruption. Because, it's likely, I don't know, again, I don't know, I don't have the facts, but it's likely that this trade association has gotten together in the name of best practices, and that there are a relative handful of corrupt judges, GALs, evaluators, Again, I can't know that, maybe it's systemic, but, these are very, hard situations to be in, whether you're the lawyer or the psychologist, or these are heartbreaking situations to be involved in. So when I say David and Goliath, I don't mean to malign that association, but that association is being maligned by some of the corruption going on within its members. So it would even be in the interest of that association for there to be a mechanism of holding the more corrupt people accountable, so that that association can rid themselves of those people. So my ask is, my appeal, again, is that you level the playing field and have a hearing structured so that the victims are the first to be heard. And then in the case with the anti-corruption bill, that you see to it that that woman who I see as a whistleblower, that she's protected from any retaliation. And I dedicate, and to all the women who were not heard, all the women and men who did not feel that they could come forward in this hearing, I dedicate this video to you and to all the advocates. And, you know, everyone really working in the name of creating safety for children and